Okay, hello everyone. I do not have access to chat, so I'm gonna have Shelby moderate for me. Welcome to my Input Systems P2P, where I am going to teach you all about a very basic, about one of the basic ways to provide user input to the games that you make in Unity, which is the various input systems. So before I do that, quick show of hands, and Shelby, you can identify this to me for chat. But a quick show of hands, who here is unfamiliar with any of Unity's input systems? Okay, that's fine. I'll go through both of them, so that's fine. Are you at least familiar? Are you at least familiar with Unity as a game engine or programming? Okay, good. So that's all. I don't really expect you to have any baseline knowledge here because I'm going to be going through all of the. I'm going to be going through basically all of my programming with you. So if you'd like to follow along, I'll be showing it on screen, and if not, you can just listen. But if you'd like to be following along, there is a package that I've requested people download within the announcements of the NextLab Discord. So if you have access to that, please download that and import that into your empty project. And to avoid any issues, I would recommend creating a URP, Universal Rendering Pipeline project for the purposes of this demonstration. Yeah, cool. I will give people a few minutes to do that, and while I do that, I'm going to yap a little bit. So there's two forms of input systems in Unity. There is the legacy one, and there is the new one. I'll be going over both of them and showing kind of like pros and cons between them, compare and contrast, and then at the end I'll be going over a specific use case for the new input system because that was the original intent of this P2P. So, any preliminary questions before I move on? That's a good question. I believe if you go into the package manager, you can check if it has the universal rendering pipeline. Let me confirm that for sure on my end. Package manager. So this project has universal RP, so I'm assuming it is using the URP pipeline. So if your project has that package imported, then that should be okay. If not, you'll just have to deal with some pink textures. There's nothing game breaking, at least in terms of what I'm going to show you today. So, yeah. Okay, any other questions? Cool. All right, so the input system. I'm going to go into code here first before going into the scene. But if I create a new script here, I'll call it sample inputs. Am I not sharing my screen? That's my bad. Screens. There we go. All right. Is everyone in Discord able to see it? Poll it in chat. Chat, what do we think? Okay, if you can see it, I'll just trust that. All right, cool. I'm going to assume everyone can see my Visual Studio window, which is cool. And I've created this empty script called sample inputs. So, like I said, Unity has two input systems. One is the legacy one, and one is the new one. The legacy one is primarily code-based, and I'm going to show you that right now. So I'm going to put debug.log. Someone, chat, please give me a message to type in here. Hello world, great. So we're going to do debug log hello world. Actually, I'm going to make this more interesting. Hello, chat. So with the sample inputs, I'm going to save the script, and I'm going to go back to my editor. So this is an empty scene. There's absolutely nothing in it. So I'm just going to put my script onto the camera because it doesn't need anything specific to function. It just needs the key press. And once I press this, and oh, it's on maximize, sorry. I gotta make sure the console is visible for the rest of you guys. Cool. If I hold down P here, you'll see that it's gonna spam hello chat in the console. And when I release it, it's gonna stop spamming it. And that's basically how get key works. If the key is held down, it'll execute whatever is within the if statement if you're using an if statement. And if not, it's just not going to do anything. So alternatives, like I said earlier, are get key down. So if I change to get key down and I reset the scene, you'll see that holding down the P key is no longer going to spam the string for me. It's just going to do it once. That's because get key down checks for a single key press and will only reset its check once I release the key and press it again. So if I spam it, you'll see that this is going to keep going. But holding it doesn't work. So that's the main difference between get key down, and get key up. And that is also going to be shown in other inputs, such as, let me type out a sample here, input.getMouseButton. So getMouseButton is different in that it's specifically checking for your mouse input. And rather than taking in a key code, because it's not a keyboard, it actually takes in a number, which represents the button that you want to check on your mouse, which is kind of strange. For example, if I did get mouse button, so I'm going to give you a mouse button so I can demonstrate how this works. Left click? Okay. So the difference is there's no key code.left click, right? Rather, we're using 0. It's very strange how this works, and they probably didn't need to have a separate kind of type for the mouse buttons. But 0 denotes the left click, 1 denotes the right click, and I believe 2 denotes the middle click. And that's basically all you need to know, unless you want to program in side buttons, and not every mouse has side buttons. But if you have it. So I'm going to do if input.getMouseButton 0, and I'm going to do debug.log mouse pressed. Or in this case, it's mouse held, actually. Okay. Project settings and checking the input manager. So within the input manager, you'll see these are the names of the buttons, basically. So for example, and you set them normally within this input manager. So if I were to type in fire 1, for example, or I type in fire 1 here, it would detect my left click, because here the positive button for fire 1 is mouse 0. And another positive button is left control, but basically you're denoting the inputs for that button, quote unquote, in the input manager. And you can see that there are many different definitions for it, or many different buttons that you can call. And you can also add some more if you want. It default comes with 30. But yeah, that is mouse button. And in tandem with that is get axis. So I'm not going to demonstrate this. It would be the exact same as everything else. So if input dot get axis. So get axis is slightly different. Get axis returns rather than returning a bool, get axis returns a float. And this is because it's looking for a value that is, as the name suggests, within an axis. Can anyone tell me what a common input axis for a controller might be? Sorry? Yes, the analog stick. Perfect. Yeah. So I don't have a controller with me right now. Actually, I do. One second. Okay. So if I took this handheld gaming console and I flick the stick up, in Unity, this would correspond to a get axis of vertical, because vertical is upwards. And positive values for that would return 1, or a value from 0 to 1, depending on which method you use. And going it down would return a value of -1. And these are often used for, well, as the name suggests, like inputs which require values within a range rather than a true or false value like the Booleans do. So for example, let me put this down. If I were to do get axis, that's a good one, vertical, Oh, sorry, not if. I'll just debug.log it. So debug.log. I'm going to comment the rest of this out. Does that not work? Okay, never mind. This is taking a bit longer than I expected. Okay, so once you install it, you may be prompted to restart the editor. This is because the new Unity input system requires some like internal changes to the editor itself. So please say, wait, new input system. Okay, yeah, please say yes to this and to restart your editor. This shouldn't take too long, I'm pretty sure. But if it does, then we'll have a slight issue on our hands. I'm not going to save my scene. Okay, now we're back. So now that the new input system is enabled, I'm going to go back to my code. And I'm going to remove all the old input system stuff. Go. For the new input system, you need to import a new package. It is called using Unity Engine .input system. Because this is a new package that they didn't include in the base like editor, this is something you have to also explicitly reference in your code. So please add that up there. And with the new input system come these new types called input actions. So if I do public input action, so you'll see input action is green. It is a type. And let's name it something. So what do we want to call this input action that we're about to test out here? Yeah, actually, the packages that I had you install are for a 3D project, so I guess you use the 3D project. But realistically, though, you can use the input systems in both 2D and 3D. But for now, please make a 3D project. Cool. So back to this, you'll see that there's a list of these input types. You see there's gamepad, joystick, keyboard, mouse, blah, blah. And if you click into each of them, it'll give you a bunch of buttons that correspond to each one. And in this case, we wanted W, right? So we'd go to the keyboard section and do by character mapped to key, and we'd look for W. So in our case, W is right here. And I've assigned W to this attack. Cool, that's great, right? All right, so now that I've assigned that, I need to actually do something with it. So since I don't have anything in the scene, we're just going to demonstrate this with text again. So within update, one of the simple ways I'm going to do this is by checking for a bool again. So with the new input system, we can call attack, and the two main things I'm going to go over here are triggered and the input dot is pressed. Okay, so triggered and is pressed work similarly to get key and get key down. Triggered is when you press it, and is pressed is when you hold it. So for consistency's sake, an attack is usually just a key press, right? So we're just going to do triggered. And both of these are booleans, so you can use them in the same way as input.getKey. So if I do if attack.triggered, we're going to debug.log. Yeah. Yep. And I'm going to, now that I've done this, I'm going to play the scene, and we're going to test it in console. And you can see that when I press W, nothing's working. All right, that's because I tricked you. There's an extra step. Got it. Okay, so with the new input system, one thing that you actually have to do is enable the inputs. Unlike the old input system, the old built-in one, you can just call get key, you can call a method. This one will require you to enable every single action that you define in your script. So how we do that is in the start method or wherever you want to enable your action. So because sometimes you want to disable them in certain cases if you think of games. We want to do attack.enable. Okay. So the difference is we call movement. Instead of triggered or is pressed, we call read value. Because this is a two-dimensional, or because axes are, wait, no, hold on. Oh, sorry, because this is one-dimensional, it is just going to give us one number. So I'm going to poo float, and that should work. And add in the semicolon there. Also, don't forget to enable your inputs. So movement.enable. And let's try this. So now that we have A and D as the 1D axis, if I type them in here, or if I press them here, you'll see it's giving me 0. Let me collapse them so it looks better. And if I hold down D, it'll give me 1. And if I hold down A, it'll give me -1. So this is pretty equivalent to get axis raw. Now, one thing that you can see being different from the legacy input system is that this doesn't give me the values between 0 and 1 for a keyboard. That is because of the mechanical nature of a keyboard and when you're pressing it or when you're not pressing it. But if you were to do this with a controller, you would actually see the in-between values that I showed earlier. Cool.
So when you're adding the binding, you could do regular add binding.
Yeah, so it depends on the binding you want. You notice that when you click add binding, there's a bunch of options, right?
Yeah.
So, for example, the one I just showed, the positive negative binding is for when you just have values on one single spectrum, whereas the up, down, left, right composite binding is for a two-dimensional spectrum, for example. And the up, down, left, right, forward, backward is the three-dimensional perspective. So it really depends on what you want, but in any case, you are adding a binding, and you are setting those to a key or a button that you're using in your input. Okay, if there's no more questions, I'm going to go over the activity that I planned for today. So you saw that inputs are cool, and one of the main game genres where inputs matter are fighting games. So I'm going to show basic bindings for a traditional 2D fighting game and my way of performing command inputs, which are a sequence of actions that are inputted to like do a special move, for example. I'm sure everyone here is at least like cognizant of what a fighting game is, so I don't feel the need to explain that. But this is going to be a very involved this is going to be a very like coding involved activity because I tried doing this myself and it took me a really long time. So bear with me here. If you feel that I'm going too fast, you can ask me to slow down or you can watch. But this is going to be a pretty involved activity that I'm going to have you do here. So just follow along as I code. Yep. So before we do all that, please import the package that I sent in the Next Lab Discord announcements if you haven't already. And we are going to use the animations that are in that package. This activity is going to focus on binding those animations to the inputs that I'm going to tell to you, and eventually how to make a special input. So let's do that. All right. Let me delete everything here. Actually, I'm just going to make a new script because that's probably easier. All right, I'm going to call this fighter because it's easier that way. Don't save. And I'm going to open the script and import the input systems package. But Donovan's right, it's one for each attack. And we need an animation to go back to, so we're going to have an idle animation as well. Since I'm not going to be going over movement, because movement is a bit tricky with animations, and also I had to get animations from a third party, there are some issues with that. So we're just going to be going over an idle animation, and one animation for each attack that we have. So here, please put public animation clip. That is a specific animation that you are calling. So public animation clip, and I will call this light punch anim. Please name it whatever you want, whatever's more convenient for you. I'm just going to go with the obvious ones, which are light punch anim, light kick anim, heavy punch anim, and heavy kick anim. So we have that, and we also have an animation clip for the idle. So we'll call this idle anim. Any questions so far? Cool. So you may remember that I mentioned going over special attacks. Because we are implementing special attacks, we are going to add 2 more animations for the 2 special attacks that I've included in the package. So I'm going to call one of these special. Well, I'll call it like it's named. So if you look in the package, there are models for fireball. So fireball anim, and there's one for a hurricane kick. So hurricane anim. These are the 7 animations that we're going to be working with throughout the entirety of this. Yeah? Sounds good? Great. Cool. So aside from that, please type in a reference for a public animation. This is a reference to the legacy animation system that Unity has. Don't worry about that. I'm just going to show you how to use it. So public animation, we'll call it player anim. Yeah, player anim. And this is all I'm going to work with right now. So let's go over binding these to each of their animations. Yep, great. So what is the first thing that we need to do when using the new input system? That is correct. I understand exactly what that said, even though it was voiced through chat. Okay, so the way we're going to do that is you need to reference the player animation, so player anim. And the way animations work is that you set a clip to the animation, and then you play that clip. So we're going to do player anim.clip equals light punch anim, right? Like that. And we are going to press player anim dot play. That will play the punch animation when we press the key E, which is exactly what we want. Now please do that for all the other attacks that aren't the special attacks. Okay, I'm not going to use E because that's a little awkward, but I'm going to use my default binds. So for me, that is U, J, I, and K. Cool. All right, once you're all done with that, I'm going to give that maybe like 5 minutes statements, because that is how long it takes to copy paste and change a few words. But if I'm just going to do it right here, and if you're a little stuck and don't know what to do with the other if statements, you can just feel free to look up at the screen. So, like kick, heavy punch, and heavy kick. Okay. Any questions while I wait and review my code? Okay, I'm going to assume that the rest of you are good. If you are not good, please raise your hand and I'll answer your questions. But I'm going to continue right now. Okay. So the next thing we need to do is, since these are the only animations, aside from the idle animation, we need a way to bring it back to the idle animation after it plays, right? Yeah? Cool. So the way we're going to do that is by setting the idle animation, setting it back to the idle animation once the current animation stops playing. So in the top of your update method, before everything I just told you to code, please put another if statement. So we're going to do a exclamation point here because we want to check if the player animation is not playing. So player anim dot is playing. So is playing tells you if any clip is playing at the moment. So the nice thing about the package that I had you import is that every attacking clip ends once the animation finishes playing. So once it's finished, it's no longer playing. So we're going to check if it's not playing. We're going to set it to idle. So player anim dot idle. Sorry, player anim dot clip equals idle anim. And player anim dot play. Okay. So I realize this might be a contradiction based on what I just said, but there is something missing in this if statement. Can anyone tell me what it might be? Cool. So that should be that. So if we were going to go back to the Unity editor right now. Oh, sorry. We need to actually put the guy in. So let's do that first. All right. In your empty scene, please go to the animations folder and drag in the fight idle guy. I'm going to center him because otherwise it'll look really weird. And I'm going to move my camera to get his better side. So 90, nope, that's not right. 90, nope, that's also not right. Negative 90. Okay, so at this point you can see that I am going towards him. And within fight idle, I am going to, so you'll see here, if you click fight idle, that object, you'll see an animation. And in here, you're going to need to add every single animation that is imported. So if you're doing this from an empty project, you should just be able to add like all 7 right here. So if I were to do up to element 7 and I press the little circle button, I could just add every single one of them into the list. So that's all you need to do. I'm going to do that right now. So light kick, light punch, heavy kick, heavy punch, fireball, and hurricane kick. So that's all. Yeah? And once I add in my fighter guy, my fighter script, I need to once again set the idle animations. So that's why I said this is a little involved. The process for doing this might be a little tedious. Idle anim, I'll set that here. Light punch, I'll set that here. Light kick, I'll set that here. Heavy punch, I'll set that here. And the same process with everything else. And then set the player anim to the animation that's in the scene. So right now, if we press the circle, it'll just be the one in the scene, which is great and convenient for us. So I'm gonna put that there. Okay. If you are using the new input system, feel free to add in your bindings. But since I put in the old input system, it should still work. So I'm just going to use those. All right, let's see if this works. So you can see on start, it's playing the idle animation. Yeah. And if I press the punch button, I should be able to punch. Punch. There. So he punched. Great. And this should be the same for every single thing. So kick. Oh, I have the wrong binds. Never mind. So U is... Sorry, that was heavy punch. So I is heavy punch. For me, U is light punch. J is light kick. And K is heavy kick. Yeah? Great. So you'll notice that if I spam the kick button, it's not going to let me play kick multiple times. And that is the effect of the code that we had at the top of the update function, which is great. And after everything, it changes back to the idle animation, which is part of the other top code, which is great. All right, any questions before I move on to the real complicated part of this thing, even though it's been pretty complicated so far? Analog.read value. In this case, it would be a vector2. So vector2 is something that contains two numbers rather than just a float, which is one number. And for the corresponding new input system, you have to go to analog. The binding that you want is up, down, left, right composite. That is the two axes. Yep. So you would bind your up, down, left, right here. I'm not going to do that because I'm also using the legacy input system. So that's like that. So if I was using, I'm going to use legacy here, and I'm just going to go over how to do it with the new input system as well. So for the new input system, you would do a vector2 analog input equals read value vector2. If you were doing with the legacy input system, you would do vector2 analog. Sorry, let me comment this out first so I don't get errors. Vector2 analog input equals new vector2 input dot get axis. Sorry, get axis raw. Actually, it doesn't matter, but get axis horizontal and comma input dot get axis vertical. Oh, this might be a little hard to read in person, I guess, and online. Let me zoom that out. So these two will give me a set of two numbers, one that has the up-down axis and one that has the left-right axis. And we're going to use the values of these in a bunch of if statements to determine which direction we are going to do. Now, when you think of special attacks that use command inputs, you think of like a sequence of actions that you're taking, right? So like I said, it's the fireball would be down, down, forward, forward, and then a punch, right? So we need a way to represent that in our script. And the way I have chosen to do that, now note that this may not be the best way to do it, but it's the way I've chosen to do it for this exercise, is public list. So this is going to be a list that contains the inputs that we're doing. Now, we need a way to represent, we need a type to represent these inputs. So at the top, past the class thing here, I'm going to make something that's called an enum. In basic terms, an enum is like a very like simple type that contains whatever values that can take the form of any value you put into it. So I'm going to be using it to represent the direction values that we have and the attacking values that we have in one simple type. So public enum. I'm going to call this, what do I call this? Action, right? So action. And then I'm going to do the curly brackets. And I'm going to type every single direction and every single attack. So up, down, or up, comma, down. And then they're separated by commas, so make sure of that. So up, down, left, right, up, left, up, right, down, right. That is all the directions that we have, 8 directions for 8 values. And we're going to add the punch and kicks. So I'm going to call this L punch, L kick, H punch, and H kick. So this is how I'll be representing the actions that we're going to put into the list. So within this list, let's do list that takes in the type action. And we're going to call this special attack. I am running out of time, so I might only be able to do one special attack here, but hopefully I can get enough that you can do the second one on your own. So if I were to save this and go back to my inspector, I would not see it for some reason. Did I not save? Oh, I have an error. My bad. Yes, I forgot a parentheses. Whichever you choose, you can extrapolate from what I'm doing here. I'm going to currently do the fireball, but if you choose to follow along properly, you can do the hurricane kick. So if I were to go back to my inspector script here, you'll see that I now have a special attack list, which is great. So can someone tell me how many inputs go into either of the commands that I just said? 4, right. So I'm going to do 4 here. I'm going to open the list, and it's going to give me my enum values. So there's up, 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 and up. So I'm going to change this to the correct ones. So if I were doing fireball, I would do the first input is down, the second input is down left, and the third input is left. And the last input is, so one of the shortcomings with my method is that I don't take into account both punches. So we're just going to be using light punch for this one. So this is the special attack. Yeah? All right. Now, along with the inputs, along with tracking which inputs correspond to which command, we also need to track the inputs that are being done in game, right? To compare them to whether or not we put in the command for the attack. And the way that I'm going to do this is with a queue. So if you don't know what a queue is, you can think about it like a real life queue. You have people that come in, and then to fill up the queue, and then the first person to leave the queue is always going to be the first person that entered it because they already did their transaction or whatever. So we're going to apply that concept into here. I'm going to create a queue that takes in action. Oops. And I'm going to call that action queue. Yeah, why not? Cool. And as part of making a queue, we actually need to initialize it inside the start method. So please do action queue. Nope, that's not right. Action queue equals new queue action. Cool. Yes, you will do this for the light and heavy kicks. So one difference with these is that you want to. This is a method I'm going to go into right now. But when putting this add queue action or method into the punches and kicks, we also need to make sure that rather than playing the regular kick animation, it plays the special attack once we check for it, right? So because we're just doing the fireball, I'm only going to do this for light punch. So so we're going to add the action to queue first, yeah? So add action to queue, action.light punch. And we're going to do an if statement and put the player anim thing here. So, and we're gonna create within this if statement, we're gonna create a new method that returns a bool. So bool, I'm gonna call this check command input. and it doesn't take in a value. So, the way I'm going to do this is by converting the queue to an array and reversing the queue. So I look from the front of the queue backwards, right? Because we want the most recent inputs to check for our command. Does that sound good? Yeah. So what I'm going to do is action array, input array, or action array, I guess, equals action queue dot to list. Sorry, to array, not to list. And after that, I'm going to do array dot reverse. That's not right. Array dot reverse. What am I importing that needs this? Sorry, you might need to import. No, that seems fine. Why isn't it letting me do this? I'm trying to do array.reverse, but I don't know what. No, it is a function that's in the array class, but I don't remember which import it is. Anyway, action array does not exist in the context. What? Using. Okay. Let's see if that works. Okay, so you need to add using system to the top, I guess, but otherwise that's fine. So you reverse the array, and then afterwards we are going to go through the we're going to go through that array, right, to see if it matches our input. Yeah? So the way we're going to do that is by checking to see, well, the way that this is going to be doing it is by checking to see if each of those queue commands matches the input, the command input in reverse, because they're both reversed. So we're going to do that. Do that by doing int input. So int, like, we'll call it I, is the count of is the number of items in the command list. So that would be special attack dot count -1. That's going to give you the end of the special attack list. And for each action input in the action array, we're going to check if the input matches the current. We're going to see if the input matches the corresponding input in the special attack. So if input equals special array. Is that not what I named it? Oh, special. Why am I using insert? Special. Is that not what I named? Oh, action array. Sorry. Special attack. Sorry. Special attack. Dot I. We are going to decrease I, because if it matches, we want to keep going down each list to make sure that the rest of them match until we get to the end of the special attack list. So if it doesn't match, we're gonna leave. We're just gonna. I guess I have this written differently. So rather than this, I'm gonna do if input is not equals to special attack, we're going to return false, because that means that this is not a command input. Otherwise, so else. Oh, actually, we don't need an else. So if this doesn't return false, we're going to decrease. Sorry. Yes, we're going to decrease I. So I minus minus, and we're going to check if I is less than 0. That is the command, right? So we're going to do the player animation, player anim dot clip equals the special attack. And special attack. Is that not? Oh, sorry. We're gonna do fireball. So fireball anim. Player animation dot play. And we're gonna return true because if the command input is reached, we want to tell the original code to not play that regular attack animation. So outside of the loop, I'm also going to do return false. Okay, so once we've done all that, and we put the check command input.
We put not check command input there, so like if it doesn't get a command input, then it does a regular attack.
Yes, you're correct. So not check command input. So if there isn't an input associated, we're going to play the regular attack. So if we go back to our game and we try this, you can see that currently it's not working. The reason for this is because it's in the update function, there are still going to be some there's still going to be some very fast frame calls with adding this stuff to the queue. So something that I needed to implement in my original iteration of the code was a delay between inputs to make sure that there wouldn't be repeats. However, it looks like I am out of time. So at the very least, I hope you learned how to how to use the various input systems in Unity. I plan to release my full code for this on the Next Lab Discord, so please go to that. And I hope you guys learned something. Thank you for attending this P2P.